Understanding the essence view. The essence view posits that essence is a unifying principle of causality, defining a being's kind and soul. While material, formal, and efficient causes contribute to a being's uniformity, it is the formal cause, or essence, that gives it its specific kind and animates the material. This view challenges scientific definitions based on DNA and phenotype, emphasizing the immaterial nature of essence and its role in defining substance. We explore the complex relationship between essence, form, and soul, drawing from Aristotle's philosophy. It distinguishes between different types of formal causes, emphasizing the soul as the organizing principle of living beings. The text also touches upon the distinction between teleology and teleonomy, highlighting the latter as a scientifically valid explanation for apparent purpose in biological processes. Essence is a unifying principle of causality and instantiation. The very fact that two twins exist, whether conjoined or not, implies that they have two distinct souls because they have become two distinct entities. Even conjoined twins, who may share something as intimate as essential life organs like a stomach, are recognized as separate beings. The essence view often hold hylomorphic dualism. There is both a soul and a form, even though. Form, however, remains loosely defined because it is based on a causal set that is easy to brush over. We are what we are because of our causes, but we are not reducible to those causes. We are the uniformity of a causal chain. We are a collection of causes, material, formal, and efficient. This triad creates a kind of uniformity. And it is this uniformity that, by virtue of what it is or its formal cause, gains a fourth cause, a final cause which emerges, as in the case of a fertilized egg. By virtue of this collection, the being actualizes its final cause. This leads many to believe that it is this directional movement toward a fourth cause that defines a being because it can now achieve what defines its telos. However, in an essentialist account, the value of a thing is indexed only in its formal cause, what a thing is. It is only through the formal cause that any other cause performs itself. If we were to substitute the formal cause, even if the final cause appeared identical, the agent would be different. For example, one being might look at two twin deer. Let's make their formal causes different, and by that, their kinds different. One twin deer a rational deer, the other remains a sensitive one. The formal causes are three vegetative, for example, plants, sensitive, for example, things with brains, and rational, for example, logical thinking beings. These deer now have different essences, substances, and souls. To be truthful, though, to change a kind like this through substitution is a bit incoherent in an essentialist account. To do so seems to suggest also a new efficient cause defined by the definition of what efficient cause is. Some might argue this points to soul's formal causes as species specification and DNA. Reimagined. The causes could be epigenetic and tied to cellular organization, communication, and feedback systems. This places DNA as the potency to become something. Soul animation could be the fundamental forces combined by the molecular arrangement, and as such it would empirically link all cases within scientific physicalist models. Essentialists, however, reject this. The formal cause is what gives a thing its kind, being one of the three kinds. If something is genetically deficient in a way that causes deformity, it is not necessarily a different kind. Science tends to rely on performative definitions in conjunction with DNA, phenotype, and reproductive capacity. This is why ligers are considered distinct but not a separate species. This raises the question, what do essentialists think about ligers? They would likely say ligers are distinct because they have different material causes and differing efficient causes, having come from two distinctive different material causes. That said, they are still of the same kind, a sensitive kind, making their formal causes equivalent. That is, these are the same kinds. Science emulates efficient cause as well, such that it also makes distinctions by origin from two different species, being tiger and lion. One might ask, what if there was one fish who became rational out of a million fish? Does that make it its own kind, or does that make all 999,999 fish of a rational kind? They may say, well, if it happens once, this is a kind not like the other kind, but if that rational fish mated with the irrational fish, and then 999,999 fish, later another rational fish came to be, it seems all million fish, or for that matter now 2 million, are rational. So the formal cause is not material. It is a substance or essence that defines an entity's kind. It is what animates the material. Let's revisit the concept of form. Form is often mistaken for the arrangement or shape of a thing. This can be the case, but it is not always. Let's review. When Aristotle references non-biological life, he defines arrangement and shape as accidents in cases falling under the categories of quality and position, while form is the principle of a substance. The mistake arises because, in some cases, what makes a thing what it is are its accidents. These are called accidental beings. For example, a three-legged stool is defined by the number of legs it has a quantity. Accidental beings are defined by their improper being, in that the efficient cause, the causal agent, did not intend them. They differ in this way because they belong to different categories of being. Accidental beings can only be accidental by virtue of the fact that they would otherwise be artifacts, material items acted upon to change form as a result of a causal agent which crafts it for a purpose but not by its own nature. This causal agent is the efficient cause. In organismal life, the efficient cause is life itself. Life does not produce accidental beings in this framework. However, it does produce accidental properties, properties that are not essential to being. Anything that isn't essence is accidental. This means an arm is an accident. A brain is an accident. An eye is an accident. All of these are accidents because a thing can still be what it is by virtue of its essence, not its sensory performance. So what is essence? How can this immaterial thing be so impactful in defining a substance yet so elusive in its definition? For instance, some claim that a partial molar pregnancy does not have the essence of rational kind. Yet other deformities or genetic variations are said to possess the essence or substance of rational mind, with a potency directed toward a final cause, even if they could never achieve it. A rational being that never forms rationality and could never form it is still considered a rational being because it came from a rational kind and possesses the essence of rationality. Why does this being have rational essence? It is said to be of a kind that is rational, but this feels ad hoc, especially when contrasted with the partial molar case. If that's the case, then when two haploid cells join into one, whether resulting in a normal or partial molar pregnancy, there must be a moment when essence is either present or absent. The essence view seems binary. Something either has it or does not. So when does a partial molar pregnancy lack essence? Is it as soon as the DNA is malformed? Is essence something that must be obtained, and if the karyotype is flawed, it never achieves it? This seems irrational. From the moment of conception, defined by fertilization, when a sperm penetrates an egg, it is said to be of a kind that is rational. Unless the definition is not based on fertilization, but rather on the formation of a unified DNA set and the initiation of transcription via maternal mRNA. It would be difficult to argue that this is not the moment of essence, because it is the only moment that seems distinctively relevant, aside from DNA exchange, that affirms teleological direction toward a uniform final cause. If a partial molar pregnancy lacks essence because it will never achieve a teleological direction toward rational being, then any embryo with a disposition or potency toward never achieving its final cause lacks the essence of its kind. It may only possess a vegetative essence by virtue of being alive. But this is not what pro-life advocates want to claim, which makes the position seem incoherent. The identification of soul and form in essentialist metaphysics. Essence is the formal cause. For living beings, essence equals soul equals form. So when we ask whether a malformed embryo or a partial molar pregnancy has a soul, we are really asking, does it instantiate the form of humankind? If it does, it has a soul. If it doesn't, it doesn't. This seems like a retroactive declaration. It lacks predictive power. It simply asserts that the being has or doesn't have a soul, form, or essence based on what it becomes. We retroactively declare whether it had the thing or did not. Attempts to add predictive structure. Some thinkers try to make essentialism more predictive by tying essence to genetic integrity. Does the DNA support the form? Developmental trajectory. Is there a potency toward the final cause? Origin of generation. Was it produced by beings of the kind? We'll follow this later in a teleology versus teleonomy distinction. What new thinkers might intuit is something like form allows for ensoulment. Essence is slightly more distinctive. It operationalizes form. Soul imbues essence to form and persists even after form ceases. These are subtle distinctions. Essence, form, and soul. Essence is the universal identity, the kind-defining blueprint. 2. Form is the instantiation of that essence in matter, what gives shape and intelligibility. 3. Soul is the animating principle, what imbues form with life and operational direction. Essence is a sigil, a metaphysical glyph that defines the kind. Form is the vessel, a shaped container that can hold the sigil. Soul is the flame, the animating fire that lights the vessel and reveals the sigil. However, with Aristotle's philosophy, the soul is not distinct from the formal cause, but rather an instance of it. The soul acts as the formal cause for a living being, structuring and organizing its matter, the body, to give it the capacity for life. The soul as a formal cause. A form gives potentiality a definite structure. In his theory of hylomorphism, Aristotle states that every physical entity is a compound of matter, hyle, and form, morphe. Matter is the potential for something to be, while form is the organizing principle or actuality that makes it what it is. The soul is the organizing principle of a living body. Aristotle defines the soul, pushe, as the first actuality of a natural, organic body. This means the soul is the form that structures and organizes a physical body to give it the capacity for life. The soul is not a separate substance trapped inside the body, but the very essence that makes the body a living thing. A corpse lacks the formal cause of life. A dead body may have the same material composition as a living one, but it is no longer a human being, animal, or plant in the true sense. Aristotle would say the corpse is only homonymously called a body because it lacks the soul, its animating formal cause. The form the soul has vanished, and the body can no longer perform the functions of a living being. Distinction in types of formal causes. The relationship is not a distinction, but a classification. The soul is a specific type of formal cause. The formal cause is the broader concept, while the soul is its specific application to living things. Artifacts have different forms. The formal cause of a statue is its shape, which a sculptor imposes upon the matter, for example, bronze. The matter and form are contingently related, as the bronze could have been shaped differently. Living things have souls. For a living organism, the relationship is more integral. The soul is not just a shape, but a complex organizing principle that includes the capacities to nourish itself, reproduce, and perceive. For humans, it also includes the capacity to reason. This soul is the formal cause that makes the body the kind of living body that it is. Why the soul is more than just a shape? Aristotle's theory avoids a simple comparison to artifacts because the form of a living thing is not just a static arrangement. A living body is dynamic. It is constantly taking in and expelling matter, yet it remains the same organism because it retains the same soul form. The soul is a dynamic activity. The form of a living organism is better understood as a process or activity rather than a fixed shape. It directs the metabolic, developmental, and homeostatic processes that constitute a creature's life. In summary, for Aristotle, the soul is not something separate from a formal cause. Instead, it is the specific formal cause that makes something a living thing. The formal cause provides the essence and structure that define any entity, and in the case of a living body, that defining principle is its soul. Why Aristotle believes the soul exists? Aristotle argues that living beings exhibit unity, purpose, and activity that cannot be explained by matter alone. The soul explains why a body grows, senses, and thinks. It is the principle of life, not a separate substance, but the reason a body is alive. One might wonder what Aristotle might say about souls with unique regenerative capacity, such as axolotls. He might say the soul is limited by differing materials, with axolotls' simples being materially distinct in their composition, giving them this trait that enables the soul to move materials this way. He rejects Plato's dualism, who treats the soul as a separate, immortal entity. For Aristotle, the soul dies with the body, except possibly the intellect, which he leaves ambiguous. This was then picked back up by similar thinkers to address immateriality and immortality. Aquinas, on his interpretation of Aristotle and Christian beliefs, argued that the human soul is an immaterial substance capable of existing apart from the body, though it is naturally incomplete without one. So the form-soul relationship has been contentious and is mixed within this account of essentialist thinkers. Aquinas is often the view of choice for pro-life thinkers, given his bond to Christian beliefs creating a kinship which allows for an intuitive uptake. This leads us to a path of finding meaning in rationality. Meaning may be found in telos, a direction or embedded purpose, the final cause. This is not to be confused with teleonomy, as it often is. To have a telos or final cause is an external cause, such as divine intention or a human plan. It assumes a conscious agent or intentional designer is behind the purpose. Largely rejected in modern science for explaining biological processes, as it implies a forward-thinking design rather than backward-acting causation. By this view, a heart exists in order to pump blood, implying a designer created it with that specific goal. This gets tied in by asking the question, why do we have rational souls? Often, this leads to a divine will that has given us this not evolutionary processes. Teleonomy, on the other hand, explains apparent purpose through an internal mechanism or program that developed from natural processes, assumes no conscious intent. The purposefulness is an outcome of natural, non-conscious causes, such as genetic programming shaped by evolution. Coined in the mid-20th century by biologist Colin Pittendrigh and popularized by Ernst Mayr to distinguish biological mechanisms from supernatural design. Accepted as a scientifically valid concept, it allows biologists to use goal-oriented language as a shorthand without implying supernatural intervention. By this view, the heart's function is to pump blood, a capacity that arose because of evolutionary history and natural selection via survivability niches filling and environmental pressures. Its purpose is the result of a genetic program and a recursive enforcement, much the way neurons pulsing are guided driven by nature to create connections, so is life at scale. As we can see, the Greek philosopher captured much of what even science desires to indicate, and it's a language that can be adopted to bridge a gap between different worldviews. It is an excellent conduit from which one can build to reach out. However, we must be careful in how we navigate this and not overly conflict terms, which would confuse the distinguishing characteristics, making them incoherent. Hopefully, this gives rise to some understanding of the essence view, substance views, unifying, substance and essentialist positions to best make a motivating discussion that is rich in philosophical perspectives.